17.
She is also a member of the public.
DODS. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We're gonna start. I am Noah Kipliagman. I'm chair of the Kingston Rent Guidelines Board, and I'm calling this meeting of the Kingston Rent Guidelines Board to order. It is 1:04 p.m. on June 15th. We're going to start with a roll call of board members. And Michael Tierney.
I'm here.
Arlene Puentes.
Here.
Diana Lopez Martinez.
Here.
Noah Kipliagman. Present. Megan Muir.
Here.
Lee Dodson.
Here.
And Anthony Jr.
Here.
We are missing Carol Soto and Tara Carey. As usual, we will invite comment from members of the public. We will give each person 3 minutes to speak, at which point I will stop you if you're here as an individual. If you are here representing an organization, we will give you 5 minutes to speak, at which point I will interrupt you. After you speak, the board may have questions for you, so please stick around at the microphone.
If you spoke before, speak.
And if you spoke on Tuesday, we're going to ask you to send any further comments that you have to the board by writing in the email address that was included in the board notice for these meetings. We will start with people who signed up in advance. Jenna Holt.
I stay on.
Yeah, I think these people do there. You do better.
Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. Good afternoon. My name is Jenna Goldstein, tenant organizer of For the Many in Kingston. I have the most contact with ETPA tenants in Kingston and can shed light on the experience here. A lot of numbers were thrown out about affordable or low income rents on Tuesday. I heard numbers based on percentage AMI and on HUD's fair market rents. Fair market rents govern the ability of Section 8 voucher holder to actually use their voucher. HUD changed their methodology last year, and also fair market rents have increased by 14% in the last 3 years, while wages and Social Security have not kept up. The number is an average of how much landlords have been able to get away with charging. 2023 and 2024 numbers closer to reality than they have been in the past. And it's the same number that's used for the Kingston housing authority whose rents Mr. Loans were noted. It only governs how much a subsidy HUD pays. It has nothing to do with it actually costs to maintain an apartment or what is affordable. Mr. Loans were misrepresented. He said 51 buildings are actually subject to EPA, not 68. That means telling DCR has been exempt.
A little slower. Slower. Yeah.
Yes, I can. That makes it sound like DHCR has made exemptions for 17 buildings. According to court papers filed by DHCR on May 3rd, 10 of 64 buildings applied for exemption determinations, and I'm not aware that any have actually been decided yet. Instead, I've seen landlords preemptively decide that they are exempt and not abide by the KRGB's guidelines. For example, at 90 Fairview Avenue, the landlords claiming half the building exempt must increase the rent and fees every year. Why does this landlord feel they can flagrantly defy the rent freeze? Because they feel emboldened by the lack of enforcement. Mr. Lanzarone cited the good cause increase percentage. It doesn't actually rent increase cap. It's the threshold for a tenant to be able to raise the defense that the landlord is trying to end run the good cause requirement by offering the lease of the unreasonable rent increase. That's different from setting rent adjustments based on ETPA statutory factors. I understand that the KRGB isn't due enforcement. So I'm asking you to freeze the rents at the negative 15% adjustment that was decided in 2022, encourage DHCR to establish a TPA presence in Hudson Valley, enforce ETPA, including but not limited to inclusion of ETPA rider, abiding by the KRG decisions, and maintaining the buildings. Per the National Low Income Housing Coalition, minimum wage is equal to $40 per hour to not be rent burden. I don't know a single tenant working 2 or 3 jobs or someone on a fixed income who makes that. We need a rent freeze and we need that negative 15% adjustment enforced. So landlords are crying, I'm a good landlord. Great, you're getting paid every month for that. That's your compensation for a job. You're villainizing ETPA because you want to practically extort these tenants in this law and follow the course of protection. Thank you. Yes.
I'd like to encourage you to email us your comments because it was a little hard to hear.
I can read it again, or I can email it to you.
Just email it.
I'll email
You
it
guys
to you.
type, just email
Yes,
it.
of course.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I mean, I can
I can hear you, yes.
Do I need to turn this on?
Yeah, this is not amplified.
Oh,
It's
okay.
just for the
Sure.
recorder.
Okay.
Yeah, so you just gotta speak with your voice.
Okay,
yeah.
great. First question is, have any tenants that you know of received, you mentioned the ETPA rider and that being part of the enforcement. Have any tenants that you know of received an ETPA rider with their lease?
No, not one, except for Stony Run tenants, which only received it after we brought to their attention they had to legally acquire it. The reason ETPA is so important is because majority of tenants I talk to don't know what ETPA is, they don't know they're covered at all because they've never been told. How would they know if they weren't told yet? So ETPAs are mandated by the ETPA and DHR to be included in the rents, but no one ever has. So how do tenants even know they're protected? They're not going to wait for them to skirt the law.
Is there a penalty for landlords for not including the ETPA rider?
No, there's not. So if there's no enforcement of it says mandatory, where's DHR on this? You know, we need someone to actually enforce ETPA in all its regards, not just the ones they've selectively chosen.
And then lastly, why do you think landlords are not including the ETPA rider?
Because the tenants who know they have rent are not able to actually bargain for themselves, so it's in their best interest to not tell tenants they have ETPA.
Thank you.
Okay.
The door does have to be kept open. Sorry, excuse me, could you keep the door open? Just, perfect, thank you. Other questions for Jenna?
I have one. What is the like the consequence for non compliance with RA decision if a landlord does not remedy something?
Yeah, so when a tenant submits an RA, it goes through DHCR, and it takes about 3 months to get DHCR's approval of it or not. DHCR sends someone out to assess it in the RA, the complaint. And when DHCR adjudicates and says, yes, this needs to be remedied, their only remedy to that is to say you can reduce your rent to what it was before the last RGB increase. Since this work only had a freeze, there is no meaningful remedy. So tenants are just stuck with something that can't get fixed because the landlord doesn't have to do it, so not making money. So we need a different apparatus for enforcing RAs because with non-compliance, there's no penalty for non-compliance. Actually get something done.
Thank you.
Just to clarify that, you're saying that that actually currently ETPA is disincentivizing landlords from making repairs because there's no there hasn't been a rent increase
Correct.
yet. And what would be the way of remedying that?
Putting a financial penalty on non-compliance, which is a form 22.1.
Some of the statements you're making about this is very, seems to be matter of fact and from a position of authority. Like what educational position gives you the credibility of speaking in such a manner on the way that the HCR operates?
Leave the door open.
Sure, so I'm a tenant organizer. I'm the only tenant organizer in the Hudson Valley in Kingston right now. I'm the one knocking tenant doors literally every day talking about it. And I've been working on this for over a year and a half now. So I have most experience with tenants.
Okay, but you're not an attorney or and you're not you don't work for the state or haven't worked for the state and or any official position you've operated within the regulations that the state of New York has on conflict with.
I know
there's the some of the statements that we're hearing seem to be very matter of fact about how the DHCR's regulations work. And, you know, they contradict what I've already heard from DHCR themselves. So I'm just wondering where that disconnect is and from what position of information that this is coming from.
I'm gonna suggest, Junior, that you bring the specific places of where we hear contradictions to our conversation with DHCR on
Yes,
Tuesday.
for sure,
But
yeah.
I
Those are-
do
yeah,
want to address, if you, so DHR has only ever worked in New York City, where people know what ETP is and they have the office there, right? So tenants there are much more in the know what ETP is. Up here, they don't know. So I actually have more experience with tenants than DHR does, because I'm the one working every day. So is that answer your question a little bit? I hope it does.
You know,
My,
I'm very, I guess what I'm saying is that I'm very happy to hear your experience of working through this and working with tenants. Matter of fact statements about what DHCR does or can do and cannot do. Statements stated as fact that don't necessarily have a reference seem very just challenging, and I'm just
Yeah.
wondering where that's coming from.
Junior,
Yeah.
we hear from many people who testify in front of this board, who make many declarative statements of fact
Yeah.
with or without
For
expertise.
sure, yeah,
And I think our responsibility is to hear what people are saying. And when we have questions specifically about what the law is, we confer with the DHCR lawyers to
Yeah.
get clarity about that. So
Yeah.
I don't need us to question the expertise we don't question the expertise of other people who stand in front of this board. And so I don't need to do that. Thank you.
but the tenant, the Arab tenant that is he's here. This tenant right here received the RA saying, yes, you are correct, your door needs to be replaced, and has received a non-compliance from the so.
that's great, and that's exactly the kind of thing that we want to hear, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
I'm telling you, because a lot of times stuff goes on, speaking out because of the reason it has. I just want
I want to note for the record that Carol Soto has joined us. Thank you, Carol.
So
Um,
I got lost walking and I can't walk well.
I'm glad you're here. Other questions for Jenna? Thank you.
I have some questions for Jenna. I just want to know if any tenants have received the 15%
No, they have not.
in any of the ETPA buildings.
No, they have not.
And what's the penalty?
There is no penalty.
I have heard you speak before about people filing all of these different complaints that are numbers. And that I think that what I heard you say was that somebody was given an answer that they were correct, that the door didn't fit and that the whole situation was wrong by but what they said in their answer was, you can reduce your rent to the last time the RGB, to the last RGB raise, which means that in our case, that it's absolutely impossible. Is that correct? Or
That is correct. The tenant that happens is actually here, so you should speak up.
okay, so what about the mandatory rider that?
Yeah, no tenant has received that except for 21 tenants only after we told them they have it provided.
I didn't receive it. I asked for my contract, my lease written and sent certified mail, and I've never received it. So
You're not alone in that.
okay. So why is it so important to get these riders with the lease?
Because that's the way tenants know they're actually protected, and if the tenants don't acknowledge that they're rights, how they advocate for themselves.
Yes, that's what I wanted to know. Are they ever gonna get resolved? When are we gonna get our discount and when will any of this be resolved? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry to be so late.
Questions? Thank you, Jen.
I'll email my statement to the board so you
Thank
can
you.
read it more clearly than I can speak.
I appreciate that.
Thanks.
And can you also pass the sign-in sheet over to me so I can read those names? And other folks who are interested in signing in to speak should
Can you leave the pen over there?
Of course.
Thanks.
put their names on the sign-in sheet over there. And I will turn to the next folks here. Kathy Dittis.
I'm here.
Perfect.
I feel I can speak to you without the microphone if you agree, or is that getting taped or something?
It's on the tape, so it'd probably be best.
You have to speak louder for me. I have no ears.
I think it would be better if you spoke in the microphone.
I need a yes or no. Should I speak in that?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
I'll do it.
Thank you.
My name is Kathy Dittis. I've been a landlord for 42 years. And my husband and I together manage the apartments. He does all the work. I help him collect the money.
Excuse me, I have to interrupt because I would like to ask you to move a little bit away from the microphone because I cannot record it in this way.
What do you want me to do?
Move a little bit
Move away from the
or
microphone?
with a less volume. in the
Okay, I'll
microphone.
do that.
Thank you.
You let me know if this is good.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm there. We've been landlording for 42 years. We enjoy it very much. One of our tenants works here. You just ask her what she thinks of her landlords. But anyway, I want to start by showing you this package. This is the package we received from Kathy Holchel on what landlords need to do to get involved in these programs. As far as I'm concerned, they're all part of rent control. You know, there's good cause evictions, like there must be lots of bad cause evictions. In 42 years, I've never seen one, but hey, the judge signs an order and it's a bad cause eviction, I guess it is. But I'm gonna tell you some of the things that landlords have to do to comply with these rules. And you may find out why, as far as I know, the ones I know, none of them have done it. That means none of them have been able to raise rents under this program, because you have to do this as part of the program. You have to submit all your expenses for your units for the last 3 years, year 21, 22, and 23, to get a rent increase in 24. The expenses have to include all the fuel, the electricity, the taxes, the mortgage interest. We fortunately have owned all our businesses over 30 years, so we have no mortgages. So we're able to keep our rents relatively low. However, if we sell our buildings, which we will, and I will tell you, we're getting out of this business, and it's because of these programs. A new person buying will probably have a mortgage. And what's he gonna do with our low rents? He's not gonna be able to afford his expenses unless he raises rents. But I mean, that's the name of the game. You also have to include all your maintenance. And when we do our income taxes, if we want a fair shake, we have to provide all our taxes, every stamp we ever bought. So this isn't too big of a deal, except you probably have to provide proof, which means you have to supply all your fuel bills, your electric bills, your taxes, your mortgages if you have them, and all your maintenance bills for the last 3 years. Okay, but that isn't the most fun part. The most fun part, you have to also include income, you know, like taxes, income, and expenses. Now, in your income, which is interesting, we've always kept our relationship with our tenants relatively private. We don't tell people who the tenants are, what they pay for rent, who visits them. That's just no one else's business but the tenants. Well, we have to register every tenant in every unit, their name, how much they pay, supply their rental agreement. Now, luckily for us, we've already sold most of our buildings. We're only down to 2. One has my office, and until I clean it out, we can't sell it. That's a bit of a problem. The other one.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you. That's,
My 5 minutes are up?
you get 3 minutes.
Oh, I own in-town apartments. I'm a corporation, an LLC.
You're not here
Do I get
representing
2
an
more?
organization.
Huh?
I'm sorry.
Do I get 2 more minutes?
I do have questions. I can ask you
We
a
could ask you
question.
questions.
I will defer to the board's judgment about if.
Questions and you,
The
and
private
also
business.
please, if you want to write a testimony and email it, it can be as long as you want it to be. You want to type us a letter and email it to us, it can be as long as you want.
Oh, I am so disappointed. I should have told you. All of our buildings are in the city of Kingston. That's why they're called in-town apartments.
Yep.
And I neglected to mention that, but I do represent a corporation. You don't care. You're gonna cut me off.
I'm gonna cut you off because you
You know,
represent,
Why is it you treat landlords so poorly? We give a
This is
community
equal.
service.
We do this equally.
but if folks have questions.
And probably by the end of this year, I will no longer be a landlord. And I have a feeling our tenants will not be happy, but that's life.
Kathy, Lee has a question.
Can I ask you a question? You said you've been selling your buildings. How many buildings did you have before you started selling? Because that's a lot of work for your husband.
We have 6 in Kingston and 1 in Florida.
Mhm.
In town.
And I want to mention one more thing. The realtors have told us, because Steve Noble loves to brag about Kingston being the first rent control out of New York City, our buildings will be worth about 15 to 20% less. If we can find an investor to invest in Kingston. Now, you can opt out of these programs. New Paltz did it and Newburgh did it. Tell me why anyone would buy in Kingston rather than New Paltz or Newburgh. But we're gonna find out when we try to sell the other one, the one with my office. I think our business, mom and pop landlords, that's gone. With these programs, they are not gonna be doing it. And all this information has to go in a computer. You can't write it out and hand it to them. You know, we may not be brilliant, but we're not techies. Now, we hired someone to do this work. That's a business expense. And you know what that does? That gets you try to seek more income. To run a business, you have to have enough income to pay your expenses.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Kathy.
Appreciate
He
it.
has a question.
Oh,
I do have a
sorry.
question. Thank you.
Yay,
So how many of your remaining buildings are ETPA buildings?
all of them, 2 of
So the
them.
2 of them.
We have an 8-unit and a 6-unit.
Okay,
But what my husband's gonna do with the next tenant that moves out, he's gonna take an office and run his business. I have a different business. And we will have 3 businesses and 5 personal. So we should be out of the program.
okay. So I have more questions. So for your ETPA tenants, have you provided the mandatory 12-page rider?
Beats me. You'll have to ask the guy we hired.
Okay. And have any of your tenants received a 15% rental adjustment from 22?
I don't even know that. I honestly don't run the business part of the business, but our rents are very low.
All right.
And, you know, the whole thing is a huge, you know, I think also we have a wonderful relationship with our tenants. We get cookies and liquor bottles and fruit baskets every year at Christmas. I think these programs are gonna shut that down. With these programs, it's us and them. And it's never been that way with us in 42 years. Do
Thank
you
you.
want me to leave?
I do, thank you. Robin Ronga,
Oh, one thing I need, when I email stuff to you, what is the address?
it is.
And I'd really rather write it. Do I get to keep this or is
No,
it
sorry, this
yours?
is mine. It's the same public notice that had the information that you used to get here today, has the email address in it. KingstonRGB@hcr.ny.gov. And we will accept emails until Monday, June 24th at 6 p.m.
You know, hold on, I didn't hear all that because I'm doing something else. RGV.
Kingston, RGV.
Kingston. RGV. Okay, now what was all the other stuff you said?
We will accept emails until 6 p.m. on June 24th. So please do send an email in. That's
Don't
in
send
a
it
week and a
before
half.
then?
No, send it in before then. We're gonna stop reading emails on June 24th.
You're a piece of cake.
I'm doing my best.
Piece of work, I think she
This is exactly what the problem is. You know, you set up all these restrictions and everything for everybody and expect them to jump hoops and, you know, get everything done. Well, thank you for listening to me. I'm sure you enjoyed it.
I
Take care.
very much appreciate you coming and speaking. Rob.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to testify. My name is Robin Rucka, I'm the political director for The Many, and I'm going to be speaking on behalf of our organization. Today, we're calling on the City of Kingston Rent Guidelines Board to set a 0% rent adjustment for 1 or 2 year leases that commence this year, from October 1st of this year to September 30th of next year. We're also calling on the Department of Housing and Community Renewal to open a tenant protection unit office. Sorry. Thank you. Here in the Hudson Valley. For The Many's been organizing around housing issues in the Hudson Valley for the past 10 years. We've done extensive work here in Kingston to increase the availability of affordable housing, establish new rights for tenants, and fight to see those rights enforced. In 2022, along with our partners, we fought to establish that emergency housing declaration that opted Kingston into rent stabilization. After the creation of rent stabilization, we worked to mobilize folks to the 2022 Rent Guidelines Board hearings. And our role in those hearings were to support tenant organizing, but ultimately it was the power of their testimony and the objective data that led this board to take a historic step and enact a negative 15% rent reduction, a rent adjustment. And that was the only reasonable decision this board could have made based off the testimony, the objective data, and the scale of the housing crisis facing these tenants. In June of 2023, we again supported tenants in mobilizing to these hearings and advocated for a 0% rent adjustment, which this board granted, again, as the only reasonable response to the testimony, the objective data, and to the issues facing ETPA tenants. And as Jenna mentioned, for the past 2 years, we've been working directly with tenants to support them in exercising their rights under the ETPA, including educating them on those newfound rights, advocating for them in their dealings with landlords, supporting them as they fill out forms, communicating directly with government agencies, and assisting them as they organize to build power through tenant unions. Throughout this entire process, landlords in Kingston, many of which have not been engaging in good faith. In some cases, they have not been complying with the law. Immediately after Kingston opted into the ETPA, we received reports that landlords were illegally trying to raise rents, evict tenants, or fail to notify them that they were covered by the ETPA. Before this board even had the chance to vote on initial rent adjustments and FMRA guidelines, landlords engaged in a bad faith lawsuit to try and strike down rent stabilization. This was an attempt to subvert the democratic process, the legally valid actions of the Kingston Common Council, and the basic premise of rent stabilization. Landlords did this in order to preserve their own profits at the expense of tenant rights and dignity. Rent stabilization itself is something that certain landlords deeply oppose because they believe that our housing system ought to be fully commodified under their control and that tenants do not have a right to housing. We assert that landlords engage in these lawsuits to confuse tenants, exploit the uncertainty that it creates, and to put pressure on local municipalities, tenants, and members of these boards. In our view, these lawsuits are a political tactic, one that has been used throughout the state in response to any attempt to lower rents or reshape the power balance between tenants or landlords or to commodify our housing system. After this board voted for negative rent adjustments, landlords expanded the scope of their lawsuits to try to strike down the lawful orders of the RGB. For The Many joined that judicial proceeding as a party. And earlier this year, a Supreme Court justice in the Appellate Division for the Third Department affirmed the legal right of this board to enact a negative rent adjustment and ordered its implementation. The Appellate Division also affirmed the ruling of a lower court that the Kingston's decision to opt into ETPA was legally valid. Despite all of this, despite the judicially affirmed orders of this board, and the rights conferred by the ETPA, landlords have repeatedly refused to comply. No tenant has received the negative 15% rent adjustment. Many tenants have not received the services or repairs they're legally entitled to. And in some cases, landlords have illegally raised rents in ETPA covered units. Furthermore, it's deeply unfortunate that the enforcement mechanisms meant to hold landlords accountable and compel them to comply with the law and the orders of this board have not been working effectively. DHCR has been extremely slow to respond to the inquiries and complaints made by tenants. For the Many has assisted tenants in filling out the necessary forms, and while some have been processed, none have been taken substantive action. And DHCR has expressed to us that they do not have the staff or resources to adequately serve rent stabilized tenants in this region or to enforce the ETPA. As a result, landlords have felt that they can get away with not complying with the law or the orders of this board. And when laws are not properly enforced, they're ignored. In conclusion, tenants in ETPA eligible units have been testifying in this round of hearings, many of which are too afraid to actually testify in public for fear of reprisal. We've also laid out the bad faith actions.
Thank you, Robin.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. Sorry about
Appreciate
that.
it. Questions? Yeah.
Sure. Okay, so what is your response to the landlords that, say that they can't survive unless they have, like the woman that was just testifying?
Yeah, I'm not going to respond to any individual person that testified, but what I will say is landlords are building equity in these units, even if they're not making a profit. Many of them are making huge profits. A lot of real estate companies and landlords are making record profits, and they're using it as an excuse to not carry out necessary repairs or provide basic services. They feel like they can get away with not following the law or giving tenants the rights that they deserve because of the lack of an effective enforcement mechanism. And they're using, the fact that they have not conducted those repairs or not conducted those services as an excuse to put pressure on this board to raise rents. It's a really bad faith tactic. They have the ability to do these repairs. They have the obligation to do these repairs. And this board should not use those excuses to raise rents. And the state should properly enforce this law if they're mandated to.
And what other work do you do in Hudson Valley that would relate to all of this?
Yeah, For the Many engages in housing justice work throughout the Hudson Valley, working directly with tenants to educate them on their rights, both in ETPA eligible units and outside of it. We've engaged to pass rent stabilization laws in several other cities, and those laws are poised to be passed soon. We've also been working, throughout the state to pass state level legislation that expands the rights of tenants. We believe that our housing system needs to be decommodified. That's the central problem here, that our housing system exists to enrich a few folks at the expense of millions of tenants across the state. And we think that we need to move away from that. And one of the tools that municipalities have is rent stabilization, which allows neighbors to stay in their home, preserves rents, not just for rent stabilized tenants, but for tenants outside of those stabilized units, and helps keep rents down and folks in their homes.
I have just one more question. I think that my landlord's engaging in warehousing because there are so many empty units. Can you explain what that is exactly?
Yeah, exactly. So that's when landlords do not put units that they own on the market in order to artificially deflate the vacancy rate. It's a tactic that they use to drive up prices and to make it seem like there's less availability than there actually is.
But they can't drive up prices if it's regulated, right?
Exactly.
So why are there 40 units in my building that are empty when it's such a hard market to get an apartment in?
Again, landlords, they're interested in preserving their profits, and so they're warehousing these units in order to do so. And that's why enforcement mechanisms are so important, right? Again, to reiterate, we think the Department of Housing and Community Renewal should open a tenant protection unit office here in the Hudson Valley. Even with a degree of oversight without necessary actions, landlords will feel the pressure to comply with the law. And also, if the state agency opens an office here, they'll be able to compel landlords to do so.
Through my experience as well, for sure, DHCR is like fantastically under-resourced to deal with this. I'm sure you, as you know, this board has no influence over the resources of DHCR. Is your organization lobbying to people that can actually do something about this, like our state, assembly and senate?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're calling on Governor Hochul and the state legislature to invest the resources needed to open a TPU office here in the Hudson Valley, to staff that office with caseworkers and attorneys, and to keep that office open and expand it as needed. That's going to be especially important as additional cities opt into rent stabilization. So we fully understand that this board doesn't have the power to do so, but we want to make sure we get this on the record, because a really important component of all of this is enforcement. This board can do everything it has in its power to preserve housing stability in the city. But if the state does not take action to enforce it, then the law's not going to be implemented. So just want to make sure that's on the record. It's something that we're hearing from tenants again and again.
Thank you for your testimony. Since you're involved in tenant organizing across the state, could you tell us about how you're seeing landlords behave in other cities besides Kingston?
Yes. So these lawsuits, again, are a political tool that landlords use. They use it again and again because the majority of New Yorkers believe that our housing system should be decommodified, right? Local municipalities are opting into rent stabilization. Landlords use these lawsuits to try and pressure cities not to opt in, to scare democratically elected leaders away from doing so. They try to use these lawsuits to subvert the democratic will of the people, to use the courts to strike down these necessary laws. We've seen that happen in other cities across New York State, in New York City, in Long Island, in the lower Hudson Valley. We've seen lawsuits in Poughkeepsie, in Newburgh. This is a tactic that landlords use again and again. Usually they fail and courts side with tenants, side with local municipalities, side with rent guidelines boards, and have affirmed the authority of municipalities to opt into rent stabilization. But again, landlords will continue to use this tactic, and it's something that we have to be aware of.
Also, could you testified that in support of a rent freeze, could you explain why you think a rent freeze is necessary?
Yes, I appreciate that. Ran out of time, so I wasn't able to complete my testimony. But yeah, I mean, so for the last several years, right, we've seen landlords fail to comply with what is stipulated in the law and what this board has ordered, right? We've seen tenants see their rents illegally go up, or landlords attempt to raise their rents. And as has been testified in the past, no tenant has seen that negative 15% rent adjustment that this board ordered in November of 2022. So it's imperative that this board order a rent adjustment of 0% this year in order to maintain the status quo. If you allow any kind of rent increase, it will further embolden landlords in their illegal activity. It will further confuse tenants and will ensure that that negative 15% rent reduction never goes into effect. So we really encourage this board to enact a 0% rent adjustment until that negative 15% rent adjustment goes into effect, in order to make sure that that legal order of the board actually is implemented.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Hadley Parham.
Before I actually start speaking, I disclosed I'm a member of the Mid-Hudson Valley DSA, but I'm not like speaking on behalf of that anymore. I'll speak for 2 minutes. Thank you. So my name is Hadley Parham. I'm a member of MHV DSA. I spent 25 months in a rent stabilized unit on 95 Green Street in Kingston, where my rent was $11.50 for most of the time, which fluctuated from 55% of my income to 100% of my earned income throughout my stay. Throughout that time, even as I faced safety issues in vermin and leaks, I not a single time was able to obtain a mailing address from my landlord in order to do what former alderman suggested of mailing a formal notice to initiate any investigations with the HCR. Still throughout that, in my 25 months there, the rent freeze passed by this body in 2022 and then sustained through ongoing court proceedings allowed me like the dignity and security of life planning at all. Without that passage, I would not have made the decision to go to grad school. I'm in SUNY New Paltz right now, earning my Master's of Arts in Teaching. I'll be a math teacher. very, very excited for that and grateful to this board for that security. Still, the first time that I was able to get my landlord to show any knowledge of any of the forms that the DHCR requires of tenants was when I notified him at what would have been my last lease renewal about the legalization of the 50% decrease urged by this board at your first hearing. Before that, like he would text me telling me that it was time to renew my lease. I'd be like, so great, I can't wait to receive my RDP8 by certified mail. He'd be like, I will email you your lease very soon. Very strange. But when I notified him of the necessity of a 50% decrease, he told me that he would not do so until like a statement of explanation was posted by this board, and then copy pasted information from God knows where about the forms that he waited to receive. I was happy to then be like, great, so glad you know about forms. Can't wait to get my RTP8 in the mail by certified mail. And I finally obtained that after I had moved out because I did not expect to be able to stay in that place. I am still in contact with so many tenants there, and I know so many other tenants in rent stabilized units in this city that I love. And I know that maintaining a rent freeze will continue to allow tenants the security of planning their life with their community here. And I urge this board to work on the implementation of the 15% decrease to give hard-earned, like well overdue, deserved peace of mind and material security for tenants as we continue to suffer a cost of living crisis. I also urge you to be allies in calling on the DHCR to resources available, implement a TPU in the city of Kingston. It will bring a lot of help to people. I've spent many hours researching this, and it's not enough. It's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. It's helpful to hear from a tenant who's about the effects of the ETPA. Could you just explain again, I didn't quite catch the part about how the 15% negative adjustment affected your landlord's behavior? Like, could you just explain that again?
So my first lease renewal after the formation of the RGB and the passage of your first recommendations on rent increases or decreases was in the spring of 2023. And at that time, my landlord texted me maybe like 30-45 days before the renewal period would have happened, being like, hey, you're gonna renew, I'm gonna increase your rent by $50. I was like, I don't think you can do that. And I had contacted a former alderman, now former, and the office of Assemblymember Shrestha, trying to be like, I don't think he can do this. I spent 6 hours researching this. It's very unclear to me what is allowed or not during the then time of ongoing legal issues. Sarah Hahn's office was able to confirm for me that the rent freeze was in effect at that time. So I texted my landlord back, I will sign a lease for the same amount of rent. He was like, okay, I will email it to you. Can't wait to get my RTP8 by certified mail. Then he emailed me the lease the next day. So I signed a lease with all the same terms as the first time, expecting that he just, I don't know, I gave him the benefit of the doubt of, well, I'm not gonna get this RTP8, but I'll follow by the rules that I now know that I'm able to. What would have been my lease renewal this year, he texted me 90 days before the renewal would have happened, being like, we're going to renew the lease, all the same terms, I'll email this. I was like, great, can't wait to get my RTP8. I will respond within like the set period of responding to it. And I waited for that response because I knew that court proceedings were set to be decided before I would need to respond to it, re the 50% decrease. So once the decrease was affirmed as legal, I notified the landlord that I would sign a lease for the calculated rent, applying 50% decrease. And then he was like, I will not be enforcing this. This is not in standing until I get some document from the RGB. And I expect that has not happened. And then he was like, you can email the DHCR here if you have questions. And I was like, weird. So I copy pasted from the DHCR website being like, can't wait for you to send me the RTP8 certified mail. But honestly, at that point, the lock on my mailbox had been broken for over a month without it being addressed, and so I placed my mail on hold and then planned to move out. So I received my RTP8 after getting my landlord notice that I moved out.
you.
So if you did not know your rights or know to reach out to your elected official, do you believe that your landlord would have followed the law?
Honestly, no. I think that because in my response to him via text in 2023, I was able to like say official words and link to anything that he kind of without issue was like, okay, fine, I'll send to the lease. But he still never even like I sent him links to the website and he made no indication to me that he knew that he needed to mail me a rider, to mail me a renewal form, to do anything until I brought up the decrease, like threatened his capital.
Thank you.
It's a little facetious, but do you think that you would ever receive the 15% that you know, were due, sir, during certain months of that lease?
I tremendously hope that the people who are still residing in that building get that because they deserve it. I know some people there that work 2 jobs or are on fixed incomes and are taking care of themselves and children and other family members. Like there's a lot of people who would really, really benefit from that. I'm glad that when it was a matter of $50, that me just quoting the DHCR to him, to my landlord, pushed him to comply with the law. And it seems now that with a decrease larger than $50, that it'll really take the efforts of his board, other state agencies to make him a voting risk about that. Thank you.
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Robin, could you hand me the signage? If you have not spoken and would like to speak, please do sign in. We have one last speaker.
Cat?
That's me. Sorry about the handwriting.
No, it's fine. It's like mine. Could you say your name though?
It's Ed Katz.
Katz.
I own an ETPA building. I think I could probably answer a question I heard earlier about warehousing. My understanding is, for example, in one of my units, which has been empty now for about 4 months, my understanding is, according to ETPA rules, this apartment, which requires about $40,000 to $50,000 worth of renovations in order to make it rentable, I'm allowed to increase the rent, I think $78 a month. So you guys can do the math. That's probably about 30 years of getting your money back. It just doesn't work. So I have no choice but to leave it empty. But I did want to say that according to the forms that I filled out, the real estate taxes are up. School taxes are up this year. My insurance costs were up 20% this year. All my professional fees are up 5%. Electrician was up 7.5%. My utilities are up 6%. And I think I'm lucky in a lot of those cases. So I hope you do take that into consideration about the operating costs that landlords have to deal with in order to provide, safe and affordable housing, which I think many of us try to do.
Are you done speaking?
I am.
The other landlord who spoke earlier, it was determined to get out of Kingston because of these regulations. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah. I have an apartment I can't rent now. I've always tried to, most of my rents are below what Kingston Public Housing is charging for comparable units. I wonder why I would do this. So, I hope there's a little give and take, because that's what's required, I think.
How many units are in the building that you have?
6.
Could you describe the communication that you've gotten from DHCR informing you of your requirements under this process?
Well, I've tried to be proactive, as far as I understand, I've complied with every single requirement. I haven't raised rents in 3 years because of the freeze that this board has instituted. I have returned the surveys that they've sent to me by mail, but if I receive something in the mail, I do it.
Did DHCR supply you with anything that helped you understand what your requirements are under the process? And
They did send me I think it was 900-page manual. That's why I want to leave.
Yeah.
Kingston.
Yeah. And as far as the guidelines that have been put out by this board, have you received any notification from DHCR on what those guidelines are and how you should proceed?
About what's
About the guidelines that have set this board, every time this board has set a guideline,
No.
have you received any communication from DHCR? No.
Your questions?
I'm
sorry.
sorry, I had one more question. I'm just curious, how did it work how long ago did this tenant move out that the apartment needs $40,000 worth of renovation?
before I bought the place?
Oh, before you bought the building. So that was an empty apartment that wasn't rentable, so you actually only have 5 units.
Yeah, but I still am, I believe, again, according to the 900-page manual, I'm still, no matter how many units it is, even if I made it one building, it would still be rent control. Is my understanding of this regulation.
Okay, so,
When
and
did
how
you-
long ago did you buy the building?
I don't remember offhand, but I do think that there's, it's kind of a fantasy that somehow when these landlords leave, that the government's going to take it over, some benevolent organization going to take it over. It's not. It's going to be someone who has higher expenses or is a corporate landlord like a BlackRock. I don't know if that's a better substitute for mom and pop.
Do you live locally in Hollywood?
I live locally, yeah.
Sorry, just one more question. You said you had implemented all of the, you've complied with every requirement. So does that include the 15%
I don't know about 50%.
negative adjustment? Oh.
We have no further people signed up to speak unless
I really don't like doing this, but I have to.
can you start with your name?
Yeah, my name is Don. I live at Stony Run. And I just want to say I'm 80 years old, so I've been around a while. And I have to say, I've seen plenty of poor people. I've never seen a poor landlord. Which leads me to say, I understand about their expenses, but in Stony Run, I tell you, I'm there 7 years. I have to say, I've never seen union labor there, which means they're cheap. They get cheap labor. Also, I missed before this law took effect by 1 month. So we went in effect in August, July, I had to sign the lease. They wanted 19% raise from me. I fought, got it down to 12. And so they, as far as I'm concerned, they've been raking in all the tenants, including me, this raise. And now we want all this stuff in the courts and I don't have nothing to show for it. So I would say, I want the 15% back, if you don't mind. Any questions?
Are you currently employed or do you live on a fixed income?
I'm on a fixed income.
And what would a positive rental adjustment or an increase mean for your life?
Well, no good.
Thank you.
It hurts good because Social Security gives you crap. Their cost of living is non-net, I don't know, 1% I got. And my pension does not give any more coals out. They're very, because it's drying up like the other pensions. And that's a police and firefighter pension out of Jersey. So yes, it would hurt me.
So you're saying that your costs have not gone down as well?
Oh, thank you for reminding me. My car insurance has skyrocketed So all the insurances are going up just for tenants also. That's all I want to say.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing nobody else who wants to testify, I will enter, nope. Come on up. And please start with your name.
My name is Richard Ralph. I live at 174 West Chestnut Street. I've been in the unit 7 years. I've been in the complex for 17. And before it was a 1-bedroom apartment from 2007 until 2017 or 2017. And my significant other and I moved into our 2-bedroom apartment in 2007, January 2017. I have not had a lease renewal, a hard copy lease renewal in at least 2 years. And I don't have the last one that I did receive. I have not received the rider. I have not received a reduction in my rent. I recently had a broken sink in my bathroom. It took over a week to get fixed. And it needed actually to be fixed a second time under the presence of the Kingston City plumbing inspector. I tried to fix the sink myself because I was a former caretaker. It broke off in my hand. And I'm not that big, I'm not that strong, but it did. I believe that was original equipment from when the building was built in 1969. I live on a fixed income now. During the pandemic, I was fired from a job I had for over 40 years. And as is my significant other, she's has a pension. She does have receive Social Security as well. I do have a 401k, but I've been chewing through it a lot faster than I want to. A gentleman previously mentioned insurance costs. My car insurance went up 50%. And when I complained about it, they said, they gave me a stock answer. Everything's going up between 15 and 30%. I said, mine's 50%. I now spend more per month on my car insurance than I do on my renter's insurance per year. I pay over $200 per month on my car insurance and $190 a year on my renter's insurance, which is kind of upside down, but they're with the same company. And I'm going to be changing companies soon. It makes it very difficult for me to make my nut every month. The only reason we can is because my girlfriend is chipping in for the rent. Everything's going up. I understand that for the landlords as well, that everything's going up, but a 15% rent reduction for us would be $150, probably $175 a month, which would make things a lot easier on us.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard.
No problem. Thank you.
Michael has a question.
Yes, so that's Chestnut Mansion you live at?
Yes.
So when they had their boiler issue, did they supply you with an electric heater?
My building was not affected by the
Unaffected.
boiler issue.
All right, thank you.
That was 176 through 180.
Gotcha.
One of the other organizers lives in that building, and I noticed that it did take them quite some time to get that fixed.
So do you find your property manager or building super to be responsive to complaints?
Yes. I did end up calling my super directly. I did call the office to notify them of the breakage in my sink in the bathroom. It still took over a week to get it fixed.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So you told us that you haven't seen the 15% rent reduction.
No.
And that would make a big difference if it were implemented.
Yes.
Do you also have a recommendation for us about what to do this year? Because we have to decide, whether to set.
I would make sure that you did not increase, that you had a 0% rent increase recommendation. I don't know how how your report actually works, because I've been doing this only for a year now. And I've been contacted by Jenna and her organization. And I would say that 0 rent increase this year. And next year, I would definitely push to have the 15% implemented, regardless of the current suit by the landlords, because they will continue to push this out and push this out, and push this out for as long as possible to avoid having to give people their money back.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Seeing nobody else on the sign-in list. All right, come on up. I keep trying to be done, but no, come on up.
Sure.
No,
Short, sweet.
it matters a lot to hear from the community. So you start with your name.
Because I didn't know about the 15%. We get 15% back, but I've only lived in Fairview Gardens for a little over a year.
Sorry.
And
What's your name?
Karen Bodnar.
Thank you.
Karen, Karen, Bodnar is Bodnar. And when I moved from Florida, came back to the area because we had most of the family and whatnot. But anyway, I paid $11.39, and I was thrilled because Fairview Gardens is a nice apartment, very, very nice. You get swimming pool and everything. And then come this May, 2 months before May 1st, I saw that there'd be an increase of $50, my rent, which I can, I said, well, I can move some else. It's funny, it was that Chestnut Hill. I was looking at that because it's washer and dryer. I was looking at other places. I said, I can't beat this. But at the same time, I'm finding out other people at Fairview Gardens are not getting any rent increase. That doesn't seem fair. Why? But I'm basically happy there, but I wouldn't want to see it go much further than this. I mean, if we don't get the 15%, I would prefer to see, it would be nice to see a decrease. Because a lot of people, I get Social Security, I get pension like the other fellow there. And I work full time. And I'm still, it's not, I'm doing okay, but I can feel the pinch, just that extra $50 every month. Plus Central Hudson, that's another story. And the insurance and, everything else, groceries are going up. But I do understand, like, some of these landlords that are private, I feel for them at the same time, it's like, I'm kind of in the middle, I'm like in between person. I can see both sides of the story, like the maintenance men still have to feed their families and whatnot, the people who work at Fairview Gardens. So I understand, so I let it go, $50 a month when it comes to that. At the same time, I'd like to see this not go up anymore. If it's gonna, if it just stays that way, that's fine with me. But I'd rather, it'd be nice to get the 15%. And I know there's a lot of people that are worse off than I am that are struggling. Is that okay? So that's basically all I have to say. And thank you to Jenna because she introduced this, sending us all letters on the notes in the door. She's a doll.
Okay, I just, I want to be clear that you moved into a stabilized apartment and they went up on the rent.
Yes.
Illegal.
$50 a month.
Yeah. And did they say that it was a charge or they just said it was a rent increase?
It was a rent increase.
Okay, so they're just acting illegally. Thank you.
Just some of the buildings, only a few of the buildings, all the buildings didn't get the increase, which I don't understand, but I know they're doing landscaping. We got new pavers and I know they're upgrading.
When did you move into your
I
apartment?
moved there, it was actually, April 28, 2023, but May 1st is when I, May 1st, 2023 is my first.
So when you moved in, did you receive any notification from your property owner that this was a rent controlled apartment, rent stabilized apartment?
No,
No. Thank you.
no, I went through my lease and I didn't see it, just basic.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, I
all.
think
One more
Just as a
question.
point of clarification, some of the buildings at Fairview Gardens were built after 1974 and they've applied for exemption. So that's probably why you're seeing that. I don't think the HCR has finished processing that yet, but if you look at
Yeah, 'cause I
other
called the,
municipalities,
down
it's
in
probably
Jamaica
gonna
and
happen.
Queens, that's where the main office is, because I did something from them, and then it's going, but it's like, oh, Christian, now,
It's just gives a little bit of just to have a little understanding about like why it's in different places. We'll see what the DCR says about that, but that is part of the process, so just to be aware of it.
So we just have to wait it out and see how.
A lot of this process is taking a very long time, no matter where you stand in it, that is definitely everyone's experience.
That's true, but I can see the landlord's perspective, too, which are more private. But thank you very
Thank you.
much. Thank you.
Seeing nobody else on the sign-in sheet, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Junior moves to adjourn. Is there a second?
I second.
Carol seconds. I'm gonna call roll. Deanna,
Aye.
Michael.
Bye.
Arlene.
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Noah says yes, Mia,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
and Junior. We are adjourned. It is 2:11 p.m. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here and for making this happen.
Oh, happy
Happy birthday,
Arlene.
And your-